Thank you, Chairman. And I want to follow through on a question I was asking earlier. And if I could just go down the line, starting with you, Ms. McFarland. And it has to do with questions I was asking to SpaceX. If they haven't submitted changes for the upgrade Falcon 9, then how can it be said that their system is certified for launch or eligible for competition on the EELV?
Well, post that hearing on March the 17th, they did come in with a statement of intent and indeed are working with the Air Force for the heavy launch, Falcon 9.
And the other point I'll say, sir, is that part of the transition phase of that is moving to the full thrust engines on their Merlin capability. Now that's a very similar process to what we went through on the Delta vehicle when we went from an RS-68 to the RS-68A. They actually work closely with us as they go through that. That's part of the normal process that we work with both Atlas and Deltas over the years. We've done that on the upper stage as well. Once we go through and certify the system, it's basically a baseline capability. And then as industry learns and develops new capabilities, they have to come back to us and demonstrate their changes that go through. And the lucky part is General Greaves is actually the certifier, so he can talk about all the details of that. So I'll pass it to General Greaves.
Congressman, as General Hyten said, the Air Force has designated my position as the certification official for new entrants. And as part of that, in assessing SpaceX's capability, we are working with them very closely. In fact, I co-chair meetings every 2 weeks at the Gwen Shotwell, Elon Musk level to assess the current status of what they have proposed and any changes that they are envisioning or have realized into their system to ensure it becomes certified in time. So in the end, we are well aware of proposed changes to the Falcon 9 1.1 system as part of the upgrade that was discussed in the other panel. We are daily, our teams, our organic government team, our FFRDC team, we're working with SpaceX to fully understand what it will take to accept those changes, whatever they may be, as a certified system. This is no different, sir, than we have done with ULA in the past. In fact, last December, when we flew the RL-10C, which is an upgraded second stage engine, we went through a significant effort with ULA ahead of time to understand the changes of that system, of that engine, what it would do to the system, and then certify for flight, which we did last December, and it flew very successfully for the first time. So today, as we speak, SpaceX has provided what changes they envision for the upgraded Falcon 9. We are daily in an intense effort with them to understand and hopefully certify that system.
And you mentioned test flights in the case of UAL. Will test flights be part of the protocol with SpaceX?
As a basis, yes, sir, but I'll use the RL-10C as an example. That engine was qualified as part of ULA's design and delivery process, and we flew it for the first time with an operational mission. It was a classified mission back in December. So it depends on the level, degree, amount, impact of the changes that we are looking at to determine whether or not it would require a reflight or test flight. And this is no different, sir, than what we've done historically with our launch providers.
And Dr. Griffin, would you care to comment?
I would agree with General Greaves with regard to certification of new capability. And in fact, I would say the idea that we fly a large number of repeated copies of rockets is something that may look true from the outside, but truthfully, it's rare to go very long in a string without upgrading or changing something about the rocket. So you're in this continual process of evolution. And certainly we don't do a non-value added test flight, a whole separate test flight with no payload, merely because we go from an RL-10B to an RL-10C. You just wouldn't want to spend that kind of money. On the other hand, when you're fielding an entirely new rocket, you will do a couple of test flights typically before you put a valuable payload on it. So there's an informed engineering and program management judgment that has to be applied to determine when you're willing to risk an upgrade without a test flight and when you need a test flight because the upgrade is just so big that you don't want to risk the payload.
Okay. Okay, and for a couple of clarifications, Ms. McFarland, some people have made unhelpful comments out in the public that the money from the sale of the RD-180 engines goes to, quote, Vladimir Putin and his cronies. Can you clarify that, please?
Congressman, I can't say where the money goes. The government buys launch services from ULA, but I can state that on May the 6th of 2014, the U.S. Court of Claims received the opinion of the United States Department of the Treasury, the United States Department of Commerce, the United States Department of State, that the payments to NPO Urgamash do not directly contravene Executive Order 13661 at this time, and would inform the court in the case of such determination in the future had to be overturned. So from our perspective, we did exactly due diligence on this to ensure that those statements were not factual.
Well, thank you for your background work and for that clarification. And lastly, I'd like to clarify with you or possibly General Greaves. Reuters reported at one point that the contracting approach used by ULA to purchase RD-180 engines via RD Amros employed quote-unquote questionable contracting practices. Is that true?
Congressman, no. It followed the standard process where the Air Force procurement contracting officer, with advice from such agencies as the DCMA, DCAA, examined the contracting approach for both ULA and RD Amros, and they did a couple of things. They went through and essentially did a price analysis to assess whether or not the proposed prices we were paying were within historical bounds. They also took a look at, for instance, the RS-68, what it cost to produce that engine versus what we were paying for it for the Russian engines, and they correlated all this information. And there was also a should-cost study that was done. So in the end, all the steps were taken. The RD-180s procured on a fixed-price basis. So we followed all those rules, and we vehemently dispute the accuracy of that information.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, General Hyten and General Greaves, for your service to our country. Dr. Griffin, Ms. McFarland, thank you for helping our country as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging those questions.
Glad to. Appreciate the